Welcome back to the Lucky 13 podcast, where we talk about all things people and profit in business. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Lantz.
I'm the other guy. They call me Josh. You ever seen that show, The Other Guys?
No.
Will Ferrell? Yeah, I watched it the other night. I don't think we're those guys. Unless you want me to be Mark Wahlberg, I'll do that.
No.
Okay.
What was the show that had, it was Larry and my brother Daryl and my other brother Daryl?
I love that. Yeah, we can do that one too.
Yeah, so you could be...
That's not the Bob Newhart show.
Unger over here can be Larry.
I like that.
And then we can be Daryl and Daryl.
We can be Daryl and Daryl.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Christopher Unger, he's our producer over here. Selfless leader.
And maybe the best interpretive dancer I've ever seen. If you have an event and you need a speech done through interpretive dance.
Why does it have to go off the rails this fast?
I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Okay. All right. Hey, let's talk about a few episodes ago. We were talking about your daughter Lucy, and she was going to go to one school, and then I'm like flipping through social or whatever. Which, by the way, this was a while back. I've given up all social except for LinkedIn.
Good for you.
So I feel really
free.
Yeah. I don't even know why I spent any time on that trash, but
it's
got rid of X, got rid of Facebook, got rid of Instagram, just LinkedIn.
Can I just tell you why I haven't? Because I got tired of counting all the tiles in the bathroom because there's 64. So just leave it there.
Okay.
Now I can catch up.
Yeah, so, I gotcha. Yeah. Anyway, so this was before I, excommunicated the Facebook account, and your wife had something on there about Lucy and going to a new school. Give us what's been going on. She was at the state track meet, the whole thing. So
I'll shorthand it with Lou. First of all, Lucy loves this part. This will be her favorite part of the day. So congratulations, Lucy. You're now top of mind conversation.
And we are a top 10 podcast in the world. So who knows what's going to happen to her?
Millions. Yeah. With the pinky on the mouth. So she is really strong in her faith. I love her faith, and she's grown up in a great church. Cornerstone's where we go, and she just loves it and has just been a part of that. And all of her college decisions with everybody, everywhere she visited, had to have that strong component. And so she committed to a small school here in Indiana. Yeah. Ran some early times that got some more interest and talked to some larger schools.
And she runs what?
She runs hurdles.
Hurdles,
Although when she was a child, we called her a baby deer on roller skates. She's just all legs. And she's fairly strong, so I think they're going to move her to more of a heptathlete when she gets to college. But in the midst of this, looked at some larger schools and stumbled into this beautiful university in the middle of Lynchburg, Virginia. If you've ever been to Lynchburg, Virginia, called Liberty. Largest online school in the world. Unbelievable how many majors and all you can do. But the facilities, the track itself, the strength of the track program, and then for her, the surrounding herself with people of like mind, like walk, fit her. And so she decommitted, which mom and dad started to itch, and then 2 weeks later committed to Liberty. And then had a great season, got went to the state track meet again. She's gotten a couple third places at state track meets against some wonderful runners, and relay team made it there. I think that's her favorite part, is when her relay teams get to go. That's that sharing. And we are 40-some days away from only having 4 kids in the house. Down to 4.
You're 50% there.
50% there.
But you just graduated someone from kindergarten.
Yes,
so you might be 50% of the way there.
Yeah,
so what's the next oldest then?
She will be an 8th grader. So we this is the year of no driving. We don't have a carpool partner this year. It's just Amanda and I. This is going to be a little bit different. No drivers. We don't have a driver for the next 2 years. So we've had, Kobe, Micah, Lucy, Brenna, they've all helped. Now we have nothing, so we got to figure that out. They're all 4 playing soccer, so at least we're at Grand Park. But then on weekends, they all go different directions. Yeah. So anybody looking to go watch anything from 6-year-old soccer to 14-year-old soccer who would like to help us with driving, just give me a call, and I will gladly let you take them to Cincinnati.
I'm sure there'll be lots of people like that. Yeah. So I got to tell you a funny story about, you talk about carpooling. So when I was working back at Defenders, our owner had moved, and he had a lady that he'd relied on quite a bit for doing driving and all that. And she owned a couple of different cars. One was a limo, one was like a Navigator, things like that. Yep. And the owner said to us on the executive team, they're like, hey, if you want to use her I don't want to just stop using her because she came accustomed to working with us a lot. If you want to use her, it'd be free and all that kind of stuff. Well, having 5 kids and they're all going different directions and all that, we took him up on it. And so her name was Juju, and we used to call her up. And one time, my wife Julie was, needed some help. So called up Juju and said, could you go pick up Jackson for football practice? Well, she brought the limo. Oh. He was like in the 8th grade.
Oh, come on.
And here comes a limo to
awesome.
pick him up from football practice.
Did she have some music thumping in the whole
listen,
thing?
to this day, he talks about it. He was mortified.
Oh, he was
more, and he never lived it down.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
There he is.
So we had to tell her, hey, we really appreciate the help, but let's bring the navigator,
can we
not
use
the
the
limo,
Navi?
if you don't mind.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, that's a real thing. Carpooling's a real thing.
Love
All right,
it.
let's dive in. So we have another question that came in. I usually don't have my phone out, but
I've got it here.
Yeah, I got to read the question. Another one came in, and I'm gonna preempt this, and we're gonna call this episode Yesterday. Okay, and you'll understand why.
Okay.
Based on this question.
I'm following.
When is the right time to let go of an employee that no longer fits your core values, company objectives, and culture? It's always been hard to lose a team member, and there's never a good time, but I'd love to hear your perspectives on whether to make the move as soon as it's decided versus wait until a replacement is sourced or similar. So when is the right time to remove somebody that no longer fits your core values, company objectives, or culture?
Well, there's the short answer. I'll do the long answer. You do the short answer.
Well, I already gave the short answer.
What is the short answer?
It's the title of this podcast.
Yesterday. I can't be more agreeable. I just went through this exercise. I'm going to try to paint it. I want everybody to think about a 2x2 box. Okay, and the top box is think about the left, the vertical axis being right people, fit your values, right person, and then the bottom axis being this right seat. They get the job. They get what in capacity. They have it great. When you hire somebody new, we call them puppies. And I want to be careful with this. I don't want to think about training puppies. I want to coach, mentor, and develop these puppies. But you're hiring them because they fit your values. And your job is to move them out of that top left quadrant to that, the right quadrant over on the top. The people in the bottom right are what we're talking about. So I'm going to come back to that. The two in the middle are these rats and stars. And if you think about the word rats and you think about the word star, it's just inverted. The word's inverted. And when you look at it, what happens is I find that rats will look at you and project themselves to you, so you're looking in the mirror image of what they want you to see, and so they're hiding in the corners and pretending that they're a star or that they're somebody else. What I'm going to move to is this. What I hear this conversation. First of all, you got to dig into the rats. You got to dig into that room and make sure you don't have any people acting like they're puppies or acting like they're stars. You got to get those folks out. What we're talking about is I call them the hostage negotiators, or in my analogy term, the frozen turd in the punch bowl, because they are thawing in your front. They're keeping the punch cold. But the moment you start to see them thaw and you can taste a difference, smell a difference, see a difference, God, think about that at your next wedding. You got to get them out because nobody else will come to that punch bowl. Yeah. And to your point yesterday, the faster that you find out they don't fit our values, it's the top salesperson though, or they hold this job. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
People will leave because that person is now the new acceptable, and what you accept becomes acceptable, and how you do anything is how you do everything. If you are okay with that, then it's okay for everybody else. And the great people, the stars of your organization, will look at that person as a rat and won't stay around.
Yeah, 100%. So I do want to clarify that this question was all about core values, culture, things like that.
100%.
And that's why the answer is yesterday. If it's somebody that you identify and say, this is a really great fit for our company, the person's the right fit, they just don't have the abilities or the skill sets, or they haven't developed in the way we need them to do, or something like that, then I think as we owe it to our team members to coach them and to try to help them be better, potentially find another seat on the bus for them, or if you have to exit them, be graceful around it. Give them some time to, one of the things we try to do if that ever happens is going to somebody and saying, hey, this is the decision that's going to be made. We'd love for you to start looking for something that fits your skill sets a little bit more. So be gracious when it comes to that. But this question was all about core values. And to your point, if you don't get them out quickly, then what's going to end up happening is your really good people are going to be looking at you as the owner going, how important is culture to you? How important is hiring the right people? Because you're allowing this guy to hang around who doesn't align with us at all.
Yeah. I mean, if you watch an NFL team, they'll talk about, great players, but they ruin the locker room.
Yeah.
The teams that get those guys out of the locker room are the teams that continue to win.
Yeah.
And you'll see those great players bounce from organization to organization, which tells you they had all the skills and never the right person.
Yeah.
This is the same thing that we're dealing with in the world that we're talking about from the business world. And if you don't recognize it, and when you're aware, I'm going to go back to that aware and adapt. If you're aware and you don't adapt, you're now being evaluated. Because on an accountability-based firm, I'm holding you accountable to our culture. And when you're aware that person doesn't fit our culture, and I don't care if they're, like I said earlier, they're the top salesperson. They kill it every year. But when they walk in, everyone's like, ugh. And when you feel that in the room, you have to deal with it. on the flip side, it's the worst salesperson in the organization who is just an amazing person, right? He or she just, you love being around them. That's what you just described. You got to coach them up or coach them out. And coaching them out is not throwing them out on their ear. It's, okay, let's put a plan together. The seat that I have and the needs that I have don't fit you, but you are such a good person. I would love to write a recommendation letter for somebody else. My good friend Brian Neal, our good friend Brian Neal, talks about a tour of duty conversation. It's such a healthy conversation. There is no tour of duties for somebody who's coming in and just, I call it just pooping on the floor and leaving. If they're doing that, you got to get that person out. That's why we don't train dogs. If they poop on the floor, we got to get them out of the house, right? We can't do that.
Yeah, for sure. You know, one of the things I think this is a good lead in is one of the topics we want to talk about today are these 5 leadership abilities. Because, you know, my 2 organizations are working with 150 companies every single month and in their HR and culture needs and things. And I know you're out doing a lot of EOS work and interfacing with clients. And we're starting, you know, these 5 leadership abilities, we're starting to see some breakdown and some structure breakdown. So why don't we, for this episode, why don't we just give thumbnail of these 5, and then in future episodes we can dive into maybe a couple of them.
Yeah. So I'm going to state the first one. I'm going to see what your feedback is. This isn't an order. This is just, we're just going to go random cut here. Oftentimes I see leadership teams that have very complex things or a complex structure, and they're not doing what we need to do, which we call simplify. Simplify. Don't say blah, blah, blah when blah will do, right? Don't have a 20-page SOP when you can do it in 2 or 3. And so I'm anxious to hear what you feel when I say the word simplify. What do you do in the organization or the organization to work with to simplify? That is a leadership ability. What do you see?
Yeah, simplification. I think organizations, and we see this all the time, they make things too hard. Like, I'm just a good old boy here from Indiana. I mean, I've got an IU degree, but you know, that I don't know about that.
You probably say fixing in yens.
But no, I love my Hoosiers, but I'm a simple guy, right? And I think simplicity is so important in the success of a business. There was a client that we were working with at one point, and the owner had called me up and he said, I just had an EOS session, and we weren't in the EOS session, but he said, I just had an EOS session. I'd been out of the business for about a year, not really involved. And I went to this EOS session, and I was hearing all this complexity that had entered the business. And his statement to his executive team was, you guys are playing business, not doing business. Because there was the meeting about the meeting that was going to happen. And then once you had the meeting, then there was the follow-up of the meeting and the follow-up of the meeting and the meeting. And it was just, so he came in, his plan was to come in for another year and drive all the complexity out of the business. And what ended up happening is they started cooking with Crisco again, you know, and they were able to make decisions faster and all of that. And I think it's a risk that organizations have as they grow and get bigger, is they just put more and more complexity in. And you got to keep it simple, because all businesses start very simple when it's just the owner that started it. You know, his board meeting was between him and his spouse, or maybe just himself. And then we just bring all this complexity.
A good friend of mine had 2 comments he's made to me. One is, at the end of the day, we just got to see enough people say the right things and do the right things, and then make that as simple as we can. And then Chris, we already mentioned him today, talks about you don't need to create a government when one's not needed. And when you're creating a government type philosophy, whether it's so red taped and everything is intertwined and there are knots everywhere, just pause, undo the knots, and watch how much better everything goes.
I find, just to dive in on one of these, on this one, I find that a lot of people create complexity in their organization when they're trying to honor people's desire to grow their careers. So they create a bunch of extra levels inside the organization. Hey, I went through a leadership development program. Now it's time for me to get promoted. No, not necessarily. Use those leadership capabilities from the seat that you're sitting in rather than create all of this. So we see sometimes these org charts that have 2 people reporting to one person, and then that one person reports to another person, and only one other person reports to them. And we've created all this complexity in these levels. And when you have all those levels, then the complexity gets created in decision-making and span of control and all this kind of stuff that really isn't necessary.
So, you mentioned what you just described is we elevate before we delegate so often. And what happens, we talked about this in previous podcasts, when you elevate before you've actually delegated, you're not getting the function and the roles done from an earlier conversation. You've elevated to, because I passed a course or I've done something, that's not going to help you. And so the delegation of what needs to be delegated where, like, you don't need to be doing this, no disrespect to it, you don't need to be doing $25 an hour work. You could, but for the organization to grow, you need to be doing
100%.
$100,000 work. Let's go find that. And so you got to identify that in your organization.
Well, leadership ability number 2 is delegate. So let's go there next.
Yeah. So just like I mentioned, the faster you realize what people's unique ability are and you get those in the right functions and roles is the faster you grow. We all have this control factor that I want to hold on to it. And I get that, but I'm in the show business game, not the show friends game. And so for show business, this needs to be done at this seat. And that when you delegate correctly and quickly, people will find out that they actually offer value because they have a unique skill set that you don't have, or they can replicate somebody else's skill set so that we can create new space so that that person can go out and do more of what they're really good at.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I brought this up on a previous podcast. Listen, I've done, in my businesses, I started in both. I've done everything in the business for the most part, right? And so I don't ever feel like I'm above doing some of those things, but I do feel like I'm cheating my employees and my team members and my partners if I'm doing work that isn't at the level of my skill set. Because if I'm just using rough numbers, like these aren't real numbers, but let's just say that my skill set level is $250 an hour, okay? And I'm doing $50 an hour work, then I'm cheating my organization out of $200 an hour.
Correct.
Right? I need to be doing the $250 hour work every single hour that I'm working, right?
Correct.
And so thus the reason we had a pause in our podcast because I needed to go and do some of that work, and this podcast didn't pay the bills.
No, it's
right?
not.
So I think that's the way people really have to think about it. And it doesn't mean, and then there are a lot of really great people inside of all organizations that are great at doing the $50 an hour work, and that's okay for them to do. And that's no dig on them.
No,
it's
no judgment at all.
No,
we all have unique abilities and unique skill sets. What it's incumbent upon us, especially as I think about the people who listen to our podcast as owners, founders, leadership team members, that you need to create space to do that $250 an hour work.
Yeah.
And if you're not creating space, if you're not controlling your calendar and you're finding yourself doing that below your pay grade work, you're actually hurting the company. Although you feel like it's a respectable factor, you're hurting the entire company by doing that. So you gotta be willing to go through that delegation exercise.
And one of the things I found too is if you're the owner of the company, let's say, or you're CEO of a company or whatever, if you're not bringing unique value that nobody else in the room is bringing, then you got to kind of start to go, do I need to even be here?
Correct.
Like, do I have a leadership team that can do that, and I need to go do something
Find another
else,
passion.
Right? Or a new way to find a new way to grow the business or something like that.
Create a different seat in the organization that you actually have a unique ability and a purpose to do so.
Okay, number 3 is predict. You said earlier this people are struggling.
Man, I'm telling you. So I'm not saying names. I got 2 organizations. One, I'll just use numbers. Predicted $1 million in sales, did $700,000. Okay. My question is not about the $300,000 gap. What did we do to create that $1 million in sales number? How do we miss it so bad? Same type of company, $1 million in sales, did 1.4, and now they're talking about their whole company's overloaded and stressed because they're not working on that significant factor of being able to say, this is what we're going to look like 90 days from now because these are the actions we're going to take. We're all going to stumble into a problem or an opportunity. That's real. But it shouldn't be outside of a 5 to 10% standard deviation of what you predict in your numbers. Because if you don't, you're either going to have a hard time making payroll, or I've got people overloaded, don't want to work here anymore. You got to get that dialed in, and that takes time and energy and really understanding your data, understanding your people, the marketplace, and to that wisdom conversation, where are you getting this number? Did you just reach back and say, this is 10% growth? I get that all. We're going to grow 10%. Okay, you have to justify that to me. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah.
My companies that are within that 5 standard deviation are the happiest and healthiest companies I'm working with, and they actually see that they can grow faster now because they've set the parameters to do so.
Yeah. So why do you think people are having a tough time predicting?
Golly, multitude. First, I would argue it first starts with time. You have to spend time. This is a clarity break of significance with data and numbers. Or I'm going to go back to people. It's one of 2 things. Or you're depending on people that don't have the skill set to get you to that prediction number. So you've leveraged on what's been done in the past and haven't looked at what you need for the future. Back to our accountability chart conversation earlier in an earlier podcast. Or you're not spending the time to really dig into that, and you're using somebody else's reference numbers and really don't understand how you are generating those numbers.
Yeah. And my whole team is going to start chuckling because I think this happens sometimes. Or they tell you what they think you want to hear. Right? Like I love it when a leader of our sales group comes to me and says, we're going to grow by 40%. Well, do you really believe that? Do you really have a strategy for that? Or is it just that's what you think I want to hear?
Yeah.
And I've created that response from people in the past. And so we've really gotten to a place where we're like, I want within 90% predictability what you think it's going to be, right? And so they'll say, hey, we're going to grow 40%. Are you like 90% confident?
Yes.
Like when I come to you in 12 months and we have not done that, or we've totally overshot it, I'm going to go, what happened to the 90% confidence?
Or you're going to write the paper in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
That's I see that with my organizations too, that they'll end up getting to the 90%, but they spend 9 months of the year not getting there.
Yeah.
And then they write it all in the last.
Yeah.
Well, for 9
That
months of the
doesn't
year, we're overpaying everybody in our organization because I don't have the work.
Right.
And then the last 3 months, everyone's going into Christmas.
Yeah.
Like I'm buried. Oh my gosh. And then we're starting the new year stressed.
Yeah.
So those two factors in that.
Yeah, I think that's important. So predictability, I think, is really important. And I would just encourage owners to really push back on whatever your team might tell you
100%.
on the side of should it be lower? Because here's the thing. Organizations need this predictability because for proper forecasting, for proper staffing, for proper everything.
Correct.
And if you're in a larger organization and you say we're going to go grow by 40%, HR is going to go hire people to absorb that growth. But if it doesn't come there, then now we've hired all these people that we don't need anymore, and it's expensive. So it's something they're not teaching it in college for sure. And so we need to get better at that.
I'm going to hit you with the truth bomb with this. When you are not good at predictability, that either means you are using lagging indicators only, or you're using present situation only, recency biased. Yeah. When I find teams that are really good at their future indicator, they are data receptive. The data is coming in because they've already put a strategy in place, and the data now just makes subtle adjustments, tweaks to the organization, not full out gas, full out brake.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Just little dials, little air pressures if you're an Indy car, rather than a whole overhaul of the engine.
Yeah. It cannot be a swag. It can't be a swag, which stands for stupid, wild ass guess.
Oh, I was going to go sophisticated. I like stupid better.
Okay, so 5 leadership abilities: simplify, delegate, predict. Next one is structure. Talk to me about that one.
Yeah, so many organizations have a plan of where they want to go as a leadership team, but the structure is not set to do so. They base it off past experience, or they base it off what they know right now. Yeah. Leads into what is the structure going to have to look like to get where we got to go. As a leadership team, your job is to make it simple. And sometimes that simplicity just means, what is the structure we're going to get that? That could be structure in your sales process, which I argue that's systemized. I would talk about structure as in structure of your organization, how it's built, how you're set up, the people in the seats they have. If that's not clear, again, you're in a swag again, but now you're doing it with people's lives, not based off income.
Yeah. And so much of that, we just had our offsite in our organization 2 weeks ago. And we've had a wonderful year. We're growing, and we see a really good path for continued growth. And we're just asking the question: are we structured in the right way? Is there a better? And what's driving it is, what is the best way to serve our customers? We want to make it easier for our employees and our team members to be able to serve our clients. But what is the best interest of our clients from a responsiveness ability, from a quality of work ability, and that sort of thing? And we haven't landed the plane on anything, but it really opened up a new way of. Let's not think about how we've always done this from a startup to where we are today, but let's think about it from a perspective of growing 20, 30, 40% over the next several years, year over year.
Yeah, the word I use with structure is, are you auditing? You have to audit your structure. Mm-hmm. And that an audit is just you're looking for opportunities. You're looking for blind spots. And if you don't take the step to do that with your structure, you build a house and all of a sudden, we talked about Pythagorean off-site, but all of a sudden you have a right corner that's off, and now, oh my gosh, my house is jacked up. You got to take the time to actually weigh and measure all your structure decisions of where it is today and where you're going to go to in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Last one is systematize. We went through simplify, delegate, predict, structure, systemize. Systemize.
Running for office. All right, so that's bad. When I think of systemize, I think about, I hate using this term rinse and repeat till wealthy, but you got to be able to hire a kid from Monticello, i.e. me, and within 2 to 3 weeks, whatever the top 2 or 3 functions / roles I need to do, I can rinse and repeat and be 80% effective. The wisdom that I got to borrow, I'm still going to ask questions on that, but I can actually come in and follow that process, whether it be a sales process, an operations process, a CFO process. Mm-hmm. Where can I find that I am no longer wholly dependent on this training platform, that I got to be able to be willing to, I can take myself through the training, quote unquote training, and you now become my coach, mentor, and developer. And so when you build a system, that allows you to be coach, mentor, and develop, and not this hand-holding, clicker training on the regular.
And I think this one relates back to number 1 too.
Oh,
is
absolutely.
Simplify, because it's really hard to create a system. Why am I struggling with that word today?
That's one too many shots before the podcast.
Dude, we started at 9,
I know.
so I don't think that.
So too many shots.
Yeah. So to create a really good system, it's difficult to do that with a really complex process.
Correct.
And so that's why simplifying is so important. So, and then you're not able to delegate if you don't have a really good system.
Think about all 5 of those feed each other. Let's just use systemize. If I simplify my process and I delegate the right task to the right person, that gives me predictability what the outcome is going to be, which means my structure is now running correctly. And so the system fixes it. And I can take any one of those and see the other 4 feed that. That's why those leadership abilities together, they all have to be in conjunction. And when one's out of whack, the other 4 have to be the ones that bring that back in.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Well, 5 leadership abilities. If you're listening to this podcast, grab one of them,
please,
and maybe say, let's go and do an audit inside of our organization. How are we doing with simplifying inside the organization, delegating, predicting, structure, and creating systems?
I love it.
I'm not going to try to say the word.
I'm not going to systemize.
Systemize.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
All right. Excellent. Great chat.